Check, check, quick sound check. Can everybody hear us loud and clear? What's going on, Coach Paul?
Hey, I hear you loud and clear, Coach Jay. And at the buzzers, welcome back to this very volatile day. How was your day, Coach Jay?
It started off great. Started off great. Welcome to all of our buzzer beaters. Started off great. Got a little ahead of myself. Posted it on X on Twitter. Started off great. Ended up in a personal daily loss limit day. A manageable risk. What I measured. Kind of an inexcusable loss. Probably should not have happened. But it did. And I think that's why matter who you are, it's good to have that principle that you're not going to lose X amount on any given day. I lost that amount today. I'm not happy about it. Not happy about how I executed. Coach, I told you I have a rule that if I do something stupid in an account, I take a payout that same day. So I did take a payout from this account to pay myself because I did something stupid. And uh, yeah, did not use the features, did not use the tools at my disposal. And I've been doing this for 13 years and I'm susceptible to it as well. I don't want to be the, you know, woe is me person, right? I'm fully aware of what I did, why I did it. And I say it all the time that anything we do in trading is a choice, right? It's not a, oh man, the markets went against me. It was a choice for me to take a daily loss limit today. It is not a choice that made sense. In hindsight, but it is what it is. Tomorrow is another trading day. I'm looking at the account, and I've been talking about zooming out and looking at your results. Uh, for the month, the account is still positive. So I'm looking at that and saying, okay, as long as we don't continue to have days like this and get back to process that started off the month really well, not too much to worry about. But how was your day, Coach?
I had a decent day. I didn't trade much. I pared way down.
Hmm.
I sold a micro S&P last night and held on to it till just about an hour ago. Not because I'm brilliant, but that was my process and I could afford it. Um, One of the lessons I learned when volatility comes like this is trade a less, pare down. Um, I think they a testament is what you come in and you can start well. I read here someone has I had direction, but my execution was horrible.
Hmm.
Um, and why does that happen? My experience is the volatility. The swings were just you know at one point where the Nasdaq was down 800 plus, something like that, almost 200 in the S&P. Well, you're going to have in the 5 minutes time frame, you can have 20-point swings in a 1 minute time frame. Um, that's hard to handle. If you're over leveraged, it's going to create havoc in your emotional process. Doubt starts coming in, and then it leads to okay, I'm going to put on more or less, whatever, and you lose sight of your process. Um, I've done it. My I've learned from my process is what I just described. Go small. I'm not here to be a hero. If I had loaded up and leveraged that, then okay, I could have made $10,000 today on a one lot in the S&P. Possible. Oh, that's without going through the tumult that we had today. You look at it, at one point it's up, oh, it's up 2,000, and then you turn around 5 minutes later, it's up 500. But that's where the rubber meets the road. Can you handle that emotionally? Or I put my stop in on a micro that I could afford. And we talk about the principles of winning traders. One of them is accept the risk or don't take the trade. I think I went through this earlier on Topstep. That same trade, I would have had a risk of about $2,700. Well,
Right.
Um, I didn't want to. 270? Yes.
More
I could
comfortable.
I put my stop in and went to bed. But that's from my experience in dealing with these kind of markets. What's
So
all that
think
red behind you, coach?
a lot of talk U.S. and China. U.S. and China discussed the Trump Z summit in June.
Well, okay.
Really, what was interesting about today is that there wasn't a whole lot of news. It was just selling. There is some news later in the week. We got Jolts out tomorrow. We have CPI out on Wednesday. We have PPI out on Thursday. And then Michigan sentiment out on Friday. And on what is the quietest planned news day of the week, we probably had the ugliest day in a couple of years, to be honest. Coach Vince says it'll be interesting to look at the open interest tomorrow AM for sure. Market's really just selling off again, not too much as far as the news goes. So let's just get right into the charts. That's going to be an annoying notification that pops up all the time. But I got hit my personal daily loss limit today. So let's take a look at the markets. We have 35 different markets we could trade with Topstep accounts, and today to the downside, we had the Nasdaq down 3.74%. We were almost down 5% on the day in the Nasdaq. We had Ben on, the risk manager. He came on Topstep TV and talked about Topstep traders trading around limit down. Limit down for the equities is going to be 7%, but if you're in a Topstep Live or XFA account, you're going to want to stop trading around. And I think the auto liquidator cuts you off if the markets hit that 5% number, which we were pretty close to in the Nasdaq, 3.75% down. We have micro Bitcoin down 9.69%. Spot Bitcoin is now trading back below $80,000. Micro Ethereum futures down 13.9%, or our biggest percentage mover to the downside. To the upside, we had the Ultra Bonds up 1.08%. Wheat futures up 2.09%, and natural gas, our biggest percentage mover to the upside at 2.18%. To round out our big four, we had crude oil down 1.58%, gold down 0.77%. We already talked about the S&P and the Nasdaq down 2.57 and 3.75%. I have a speaking of whoever said they had the direction right and the execution wrong. It happens. Like Coach Paul said, a way to kind of get rid of that or get away from that is maybe scaling down, sizing down. I had the direction right as well. We opened up this morning in the Nasdaq. I said it on opening call actually. We opened up in the Nasdaq down 1.6%, and this is for the New York session. We opened up in the S&Ps down 1.25%. And I don't have the stats. Maybe I'll look at Edgeful and see what these stats are for this. But anytime from my experience that I've seen us open with a 1.5% gap or more in the NASDAQ, and you can go back and watch opening call, it's a high likelihood of continuation of that gap. And that's exactly what we saw today. That was the game plan coming into it. And I think my first trade was a short, and kind of just got chopped up. But I'm looking at uh, look at a daily, coach, really quick. I have an
Mhm.
S&P chart up here. What are we looking at on the daily?
Well, in the daily, we've been on a 200-day moving average in the futures and closed above it, I think below it. So used to saying above when dealing with stocks. I think it was Wednesday, and did nothing but pick up momentum to the downside. But interestingly, the cash is different because it costs to carry, and I don't want to glaze you over with the concepts of cost to carry, but it's reflected that the cash index today settled under its 200-day moving average. Um, this doesn't we talk it doesn't do it very often. It's a powerful river of buying that comes into stocks. We talked about this last week. They're not showing up. What I mean, the big money is on the sidelines.
Warren
It
Buffett's sitting
needs
on $300 billion dollars worth of cash.
and smiling.
It's a lot of
Now,
cash.
there's one thing that I will say is number one. you'll know the bottom's over when he makes some incredibly wild deal like he did with Goldman Sachs in 2009,
Mm.
where they paid him to buy their stock. It's what cash does. That's why he is who he is. Um, but in reading the flow of this market, I mean, I don't want to be I'm talking with like I have a flair for the obvious, but as a trader, read the flow. Look, half hour. What? How long we've been under the half hour 200 day 200 bar moving average? And we tested it late last week and got sold off. We came close to it again, sold off. We actually closed above it, sold off. That's the flow. How to execute that is the is the key. And when it's volatile, it ain't easy. You know that when we look at a chart, it looks really easy. Now, right? Without a consistent risk plan, that's what we get. We lose our we lose control. But
True.
going into today, you talked about it, and there's a high probability with a gap down that it will continue. Now, if you could get it off in the first 5 minutes last night, you really didn't feel heat. It came and challenged it, but it never followed through. Um, but that half an hour, and those aren't small moves. That was that the half an hour opening
This is
last
the
night?
last night's half an hour opening. We had we opened up with a gap down, and then in that half an hour, we moved about another 0.5% down in the S&Ps. We traded through that range, kind of range bound, flat VWAP opportunities on both sides. My first trades actually last night were just a couple built a buffer going into fast markets this morning, just buying some S&P on the low of this candle here, right around 57.16, just trading back into the range as we had, pretty flat VWAP. There was an opportunity to take the other extreme of that range for a short with that flat VWAP again, and maybe you assume that this happens, but we really didn't start selling off strong until late in the London session and into the New York session.
Yeah, that's a good point. So when we used to call it passing the deck, London came in, did it now. We've seen London or Europe sets a tone. Um, what was their reaction? Sell more. Now, that isn't just because a bunch of English guys got together and went, "Oh, blimey, sell this." No, this is a flow of large capital. Doesn't doesn't knows no border. But the reaction, and someone's asking, "Hey, coaches, how could we have been aware of this selling today without this morning's gap down or knowing the prior trend?" Um, Attach a VWAP to whatever anchor a VWAP to whatever time period you want to start with. So let's just start with London when it opened up. We can go to a 5 minute chart if we like. I call this random entry.
So the thing about London Open, remember with daylight savings time, it is going to be an hour later than we normally look at. So normally we're looking at 3 a.m. Eastern time, but you can see it in the volume here. The volume picks up at 4 a.m. Eastern time. So your London Open until our friends across the pond here in the U.S. Adjust their clocks is going to be 4 a.m. Eastern, 3 a.m. Central time. So just be aware of that.
So there's a random entry, and not knowing prior trend, we don't know what happened in the present. What do we see at when London opened? Selling, urgent selling. There was no counter activity that could change the flow until later when it closed above VWAP. but still it didn't take out the range. Um, that's one way to start. Let's say you take the London low after the opening, the first low. Um, that one. Attach a VWAP to it. Okay. Now, if I'm trading on the buy side and I that's the level I want the orders to go with me or volume. Oh, that was a nice scalp. And I say scalp because you're going against the flow. But that's one way to determine. And then whatever your entry is. Um, but if you fell in love with that, well, you didn't have like to me, it's 2 to 1. If you that I and can see from that you got a 2 to 1 risk reward on using 2 ATR risk. But you're still going against what? The open. So that's one way that when we review reading the flow, reading volume, that's a way to get into the flow. Um, and there's many different ways to do it. This is the one that is that we watch here at the buzzer.
And it was pretty consistent all day, even on the pops up this morning. We have the New York session opening range here. I'm looking at a 3 minute opening range. Uh, Very similar story. If we attach VWAP there, when that volume comes in for the New York session, not maybe not right away, we get a decent sell. And I took a couple. I think I took one trade initially that got stopped out, and then got back into that trade when we rejected up at the VWAP from the session. And same thing, just trying to get into the flow. Again, location matters. Maybe in day trading, timing matters a little bit. The second trade that I took on the short side, um, back at 56.90, uh, stop was above this high because of this, right? We already checked view up. There wasn't enough convinced buying to close us above there and hold above it. So the idea is, instead of getting wicked out on a stop, put the stop in a location that the market has not traded, that wound up being about 2 ATRs on that 3 minute chart above that high, and then just a comfortable short. Really, one that could have held all day. We did not get another close above VWAP for the rest of the day. So even if you didn't know that this was going to happen, it's kind of hard to say that you knew that this was going to happen. Um, there was a ton of room today to get in the trend. Now, these type of trend days aren't going to happen all the time. Um, But, you know, a 1% day it looks very similar to a 3% day, right? Where or a 1.5% day looks very similar to a 3% day. Uh, Selling comes in and there isn't enough convinced buying, um, to get back above VWAP, right? Which is what we see here. And the angle of this VWAP is down and to the right, right? So it's not flat. It's telling you that not only is price moving lower, but volume is selling this. Go ahead, coach.
Yeah, to look at what's interesting, the volume itself after the initial selling of this morning, the continuation is wasn't we look for a volume that sticks out. Well, that red line is the average volume. So as we went lower, you would look for a bottom, a responsive buy, like would be big. Like we've seen it 4 times, 5 times the average volume. So that isn't short covering. That's an institution coming in and saying, okay, we're going to buy it here. We didn't see that. We still haven't seen that.
No buying. Even on the retest of it, I think where we were getting long during fast markets was right around here, where it looked like a turn. Right. Again, we don't know that the day is going to look like this. I think there were definitely some targets to the downside that we were looking at. But even on a turn, right, where I ended up on the day, where I probably should have locked out, was a long where we got overextended. Right, which is going to happen. And once we started to make some closes above here and start to hold a trade back up to it, but again,
That's it.
if I'm up here against these VWAP, I'm a counter trend trader. I have to know where my trade fits in the overall trend of the market. And in this case, this is what the market was willing to give us. Um, Pedro's confused about the markets being closed. Pedro, we had daylight savings time in the US, so we pushed our clocks forward an hour. So I'm assuming that you're probably not in the US, maybe somewhere else in the world. Um, but the markets are closed. 'Cause we moved our clocks up by an hour. And yes, it is very confusing. If anyone is listening out there who has the power to stop this stuff, please just let us all use the same clocks so there's no confusion. I know the farmers needed it a long time
Well,
ago, but
there's a quick story on the history. It used to be different towns would have different time. Like I know one was the state of Wisconsin here in the U.S. had hundreds of of different times, local times, and the problem was exacerbated when the continental train line that went from New York to California was built. Now, if you're running a train, you can't have 600 different time zones. Like, what time is the train? We struggle on our time zones now. Imagine what was happening. So there was a movement to change to standard. That's why it's standard time. But I think it can be done even better. Like, really, this is 2025.
yeah.
There is still a lot of confusion. I use a world clock to help me. Um, One of the great things about having an internet. But if watch that so you can get an idea of what time zones we're in because it, you know, one doesn't do it, one does. It creates a lot of confusion. Um, so keep an eye on that. Understand it because he can. That's a problem, right?
Yep. Yeah, it throws off schedules for sure. So just keep an eye on that. Again, when your time goes forward in London, then we should all be in sync again. But for a couple of weeks, we're going to be off. So just keep that in mind. If you ever have any questions, just look at your chart. And when you see volume start to come in during the London session, that's the start of the day. We can see it here, 4 a.m. Eastern time. All right. So I do want to bring up one thing here. We talk about a trade often here where I saw this is where I lost on the day.
Yes.
This high volume candle right here is where I started buying and the market continued to sell off. I want to talk about, and we use a perfect example. We sometimes it may feel like we cherry pick examples of when this works out. Can anyone in the chat tell me why this didn't work?
Great question.
We had a ton of volume to the buy side. Um,
Biggest volume
Biggest
and
volume for a while.
not a bit. Yeah. Interesting. It was about the same amount of buy volume as that one that didn't work.
Yep. So Rich got it. No volume follow through on the buy side. 100%. LV says because it was in a downtrend. Yeah, I mean, hey, dumbass, just sell it when it's going down, right? It's easy enough.
Didn't close above VWAP.
But the volume never picked up to the other side, right? And LV, like Coach Paul says, for the obvious. Sometimes that is the reversal pattern, but again, if we attach VWAP there, there is no buyers in this market. Captain Obvious for sure. Captain Obvious, but I was here buying it. Um, Trying to preempt a
Well,
trade, and I think this is the danger of preempting a trade, right? Was there a reversal at some point? Yes. This one, if you're using VWAP that way, looks a lot different than this one. Did I have to preempt this trade? No. And you accept the risk that comes with that, right? Where we talked about if I'm preempting a trade just because it was high volume, that was one of the 4-point checklist on that trade. And Rich says this is why I don't range trade 100%. That was one of the four on the checklist for a reversal, and I only got one, but I was willing to take the trade. And When you preempt a trade, you're accepting lower probabilities, uh, and that's the one that didn't work out. Now, this one, for example, where we had high volume, volume left the range, higher probability, we actually got the reversal. So just be conscious of that. If you're taking a trade and it looks like a setup, um, it could be one, but it could also not be one. Where in a downtrend, right? LV, and you're 100% right. It was in a downtrend, but so was this. But this one actually worked and this one didn't, right? So if you're looking for that playbook, make sure you have everything checked off before you're taking that trade.
You mentioned preempting.
Mhm.
I get burned so many times. I quit. Me too. I don't. It's. I don't do it. One of the rules of that trade is it has to break the high. It has to break the range on the upside, and it didn't. Now, an aggressive as me, I'll buy it if it goes above VWAP. But one of the things to understand here is that this one didn't make new highs for the day. A couple of understand in the flow order flow of the day, that was a high of the last half an hour, but it didn't make the high of the day. If you preempted it, and I like doing it when I preempted. I like getting above VWAP. I can I can pare down my risk. It's saying, well, I'm going to buy it above it, and if it gets below it, I'm out. I, because why? Well, the buyers didn't aren't showing up that I need. The second time,
Yeah,
it was
much
off
different.
the low of the day.
And you don't know it's going to be the low of the day, but you
Right.
know, technical treasure says, can you show again volume leaving the range? So I went down to a shorter time frame because someone asked, does it look the same on a smaller time frame? Let's look at that 1 minute high volume candle again. This is a 1 minute chart now, and same thing. What happens? 1 minute chart. I attach VWAP to it. We don't get to see the market like this. We get to see it like this. But again, I don't have to preempt trades. If I'm trying to identify the flow of the market, what does the flow say right now? It's not saying upside. It's not really saying downside either, right? But it's not necessarily saying upside. So I could, right? What would be the better trade here if I was looking to trade this long? Buying off the lows of that high volume. But at some point, this red line, if it's going to trend, needs to start ticking upwards, and it never does, right? So I have to think about position management here. Flat VWAP says fade the extremes of the range, so buying here is okay. But again, this is a very minute time frame we're looking at here. We're in a day that we're almost down, 3% on the S&P. Uh, and that flow never picks up to the upside, so I have to think position management here. The difference is, and when we say volume leaving the range, we're talking about this red line here, which is VWAP. This one, same thing, 1 minute candle. That VWAP almost immediately leaves that range and sets the low for the day, right? So my mistake here was preempting a trade that was not ready to happen yet. It's funny because on a day like today, I made when I was in profit, made most of the money to the long side. This was just a trade that did not give me a full checklist and uh, turned into a loser. But LV says high volume sometimes means someone's getting liquidated, not always a good sign. Yeah, I mean, you need uh, buying. You could be buying to close, right? You could get high volume, and it could be buying to close a position. If I'm buying to close because I'm short, that doesn't necessarily mean that I want the market to go up or need the market to go up or I'm going to push the market up. Right? I'm just getting out. Uh, or it could be sell side volume. I could be selling to close because I was long and I just get liquidated, and vice versa. So uh,
One other thing, that later trade,
mhm.
it was what time?
Time of day, 100% matters. This was during power hour.
Yeah,
This was
so
during
was the
power hour.
last. Can we expect a short covering rally off the lows?
Yep.
No, there's a high probability of that. Also, the volume,
Mm.
institutional volume moves the market. At
It
this point,
does.
they they stopped selling. There wasn't institutional buying. They just stopped selling.
Let's talk about where we are, and then we go to some other markets. Let's talk about where we are on the daily here, and I switch over to the Nasdaq just because we spent a lot of time on the S&P there. We've been under that daily 200 moving average on the futures for a little while now. Some significant closes, and again, if we zoom out, this does not happen often. We're looking at 2022. We stayed under it for a little while. Uh, Buffett has all his money in his shoebox under his bed.
It's a big bet.
Big shoebox too.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
we and we're just not seeing these markets hold a bid at all. Um, so I'm looking at the August lows, right? Are these 2024 lows? Not 2024 lows necessarily, but lows of the pullback in August. Again, these are futures contracts, so they are adjusted in price. But for adjusted price, we're looking at 18,915, basically the high of this daily candle that made the August low. We are within a daily ATR of that at uh, pretty close to it. Pretty close to it. Just over a daily ATR away from that range. And what are we closing 13% off the all-time high in the futures? These markets look heavy. Coach Vince was saying in the chat, big money is waiting on the sidelines at first to buy at some point, and we know how equities work. They're meant to go up, uh, but at the same time, with negative news, I'm looking at this 2022 chart. We spent a lot of time under that 200 moving average. What are you looking at on a daily, Coach?
Um, just exactly what you said. I'm in equities. I'm trading the short side,
Mhm.
and I'll find a place to lean using volume, reading flow,
Yep,
and then sizing out my risk. I'm going to trade to the sell side. Doesn't mean we can't have a huge rally tomorrow. I don't. But if it has a huge rally tomorrow and I lose a few $100s, I'll feel good about it. But the flow is definitely to the downside. When you see Tesla was down 15% today. It's down over 50% this year. It's March.
yeah,
That's Think of it, if that was a trading account, it's equity. It's lost 60% of its value in a couple months.
and that's a big company.
It's a big company. The chances of it turning around, the probability is low. There's something wrong. Um, that's reflecting in. That's why the Nasdaq has been weaker. If we look at the Nasdaq versus the S&P in the cash market or in the cash index, Nasdaq has been under the 200-day moving average for about a week now. S&P's finally settled underneath it. So, and when we talk about volume, this is what I'm saying. We haven't seen, when we see buying volume and a corresponding rally that's larger than the average true range, we'll know they've come in. You know, I don't know, old trader told me, from the floor says, when the lower high is in after it's made. Your job is not to predict it, but to get in the middle. But one of the first signs we should see is a large rally with large volume,
Yep,
and
we do.
we, we're
Go
not
ahead, Coach.
seeing it.
No, we're not seeing it at all. And it'll happen eventually. We don't have to try to guess. Get in the flow with the markets is the move right now. And it's been to the downside, right? Where we were by the dip all 2023, 2024. It has been sell the rip since the inauguration, pretty much. All right, but let's get to another market. We do have jolts tomorrow, like Miles Shea just reminded us in the chat, so be aware of that. Take a look at gold here on a daily in gold. Uh, Still trying to figure out where it's going. Been kind of in a range over the last 2 weeks or so, maybe, and even tighter range where we're trading between 2,900 and 2,940 in gold. Um,
Oh,
Hasn't been the easiest market to trade, in my opinion, unless you're just buying it at the lows of this range and selling it at the highs. That range is contracting, and what we see in gold is it going to do this, and then it's going to break out and give us a pretty strong move. Here is last night's open in gold. What are you looking at here, Coach?
well, it looked like early it was going to rally. We've said, we're looking to buy gold. Now, last night, on a price basis, we rallied, made new highs. But what did VWAP do? Stayed within the range, and stayed in there for most of the day. What I find interesting with gold overall, I mean, it's pretty subdued. It broke, but it was subdued. It was down $27, $30, which is and, not that big of a move. Um, but go back to the daily really quick. This kind of this kind of reminds me of equities about a month ago.
Yep.
And almost we have those little ranges, little dojis, um, for what, 3 days in a row. We're breaking underneath the 20-day moving average, and the 20-day moving average. What's happening? It's starting to turn. It's ticking lower. One of the ways to look at this on a price basis, it's losing its momentum.
Yep.
Um, it's well, tomorrow. I'm gonna actually tonight. I'm gonna see if it fails if it fails on the open in first half hour. I'm gonna look to sell it for trying to get in front of in front of a possible liquidation move. What
Okay.
happens in this kind of volatility in equities? You get a liquidity event, which means larger players, big hedge funds, some could be caught here. They get margin calls. Someone mentioned margin. One of the things you don't have to worry about in day trading or prop trading is margin. But for the rest of the world, it's extremely important. They're going to raise margins as it relates to the volatility. Um, what that means is larger funds might have to raise, either put more money in or liquidate positions, which could be winning positions. Not that they're bearish gold, but hey, we got to come up with some cash. Think of a store that has different um, articles in its inventory. Well, we got to get rid of some inventory. And what happens is funds start liquidating winning trades along with liquidating losing trades because they got to get
Pay
some
for the
cash.
losers.
That's the pay. Yeah, just and I'm not saying it's there, but it has to me this look of if some large selling comes into this market, they're going to have a hard time finding buyers. The buyers are tired.
Stuff.
Looking at that chart.
Yeah,
So
it does look heavy up here.
we talked. This is. It reminds me of a month ago. We were talking about that in the S&P and the Nasdaq.
Yeah, we definitely were. Definitely were. We had some high volume up at the highs, look like that exhaustion. We're not able to make new highs. Uh, moving averages starting to turn. Um, Very indecisive candles over the past 3 days, right? If we look at let's go to the NQ chart real quick. We'll kind of point out the three candles we were talking about. Way more dramatic example in the Nasdaq than in gold, but very similar, right? Three indecisive candles, and all of a sudden start to see that volume pick up on the daily and sell off. And in gold, what we're talking about are these three right here. Let's see tomorrow as we close outside of the range of those three candles, whether or not we get some continuation. to the downside. Any reason you don't use electronic trading hours? I think we are using electronic trading hours, right? Or using extended trading hours. If you're talking about regular trading hours, we did talk about that a little bit. Some of the markets that we trade 24 hours, especially something like gold, where we see a lot of price action uh, overnight in the London session, Asian session. Like to look at it all. If I'm, trading the New York session, is there a case for me to just remove overnight and just look at regular trading hours? There is, and on some platforms that I have up on the side, I do have that. Um, but whatever you do, keep it the same.
I like the idea of removing the overnight inequities. I
So the one
really do.
problem with
Yeah,
doing that in gold is you cut out the open.
exact gold is different.
Right.
Volume can come in, and we've saw in gold, crude, Bitcoin. There was an example last week. There was 28,000 contracts traded in Bitcoin in a half an hour. I think most of it was done in 5 minutes. It can come at any time, but the volume in equities comes when the New York markets open. It's, it's more than it's a principle. If you only trade equities versus world markets such as crude oil, gold, Bitcoin, then overnight has less importance. But if you're trading these, and look at that, volume can come in at any time and does.
Yes, it does. Will Rodden has a pretty important question. Where are the 100 like button taps? It's a great question, Will. I don't know. We got 909 people watching here. If you like what you're hearing, um, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe as well. Tell your friends and family too. Shout out to Topstep and the whole team hitting 150K subscribers today. And for all of you, our audience, who's faithfully tuning in to us. We appreciate it. I don't know what the deal is going to be, but or what the party is going to be. My vote was for a pizza party, but Andre said we're going to be doing something bigger than that. So we'll find out when the Top Step team announces it. But I'm sure everyone is going to be happy for whatever that is. So hit the thumbs up button for 150K subscribes. G Man, first time tuning in. I liked it. G Man, is that? Why do I feel like we've had a G Man in here before? We might have. Uh, But if it's your first time tuning in, we appreciate you joining. Maybe you found yourself here because you thought it was Power Hour, but the markets are actually closed. Well, welcome to At the Buzzer, where the markets are closed and we talk about them. But thank you for joining us. There can only be one G man. With a name like that, I feel like there can only be one. You can't have two G men in the same room. One of us has to go. All right, let's take a look at crude oil. Um, Elijah Warner, first time here as well. Thank you all for joining us. Crude oil. Um, Feels like it's kind of the forgotten market. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. Even Deanna, who's our resident energies trader, has been moving on to other energies. Crude has been in a pretty nice downtrend since we hit that $80 level. In January, and all we've been doing is selling. Right, the drill baby drill is working. We're finding the bottom of the barrel potentially in crude, and we're coming down to what was the low of that demand for all of Q4 last year. We're coming down there. Yeah, I feel like every time I look at crude, it's been a pretty nice sell. I haven't traded it too much, but it's working. Right, we're back below the 200 moving average on the 30-minute chart, and that has just been a great opportunity to sell. Really nice movement today. What are you looking at in crude, Coach?
No, like we've said before, we're still in the long term sideways action. But looking at the half hour, we've traded both sides of unchanged. Let's start with last night.
Start with last night. Let's take a look. Here it is. Here's last night's open.
Well, there was a case where VWAP wanted to leave the range. Look at that.
Yeah.
And went flat. Um, I don't see that too often. That flat at the low of the range. I mean, um, it's a balanced market. Um, uh, I would have sold it, and
Hmm.
I wasn't watching it. I have no problem selling that.
Yep. Sold it here.
Was-
2 ATRs would have been at that point on the 30-minute would have been about 40 ticks. And at that point, like you're saying, coach, you're going with the higher
That's
time frame trend.
reasonable.
Didn't work.
Yep. Okay, where is it now? Let's read volume. We know what's that London's going to open soon, and all of that was in Asia. Um, Look at that. We get two big candles there that are buying. I get stopped out. All right. If I do a micro, it's $40, two my $80. Okay, I was well worth risking. Um, but if you wanted to buy it and were patient, you had a reason to. It's tough market. We just thought it's tough. It doesn't, but tough for who? Tough for the way I trade.
Right.
That's all. It's all personal. Um, but let's see. There was a good place as a buyer there. If you just bought it over VWAP or with volume when London came in, but 2-to-1 trades on day trades, I highly recommend it. Um, let's see what happens through to the New York Open.
Shout out to Hogue and JD who take the opening range short. Try to take the opening range trades in crude oil and gold. They took it this morning on the opening call in crude oil. And basically, what they're looking at 1 minute opening range, whatever side the market breaks, they take that trade instantly a 20 point or 20 tick profit trade and could have held it all day. Um, I mean, damn, they got short at 67.43
Okay.
and it was a $2 almost a $2 move to the downside.
There you go.
And they
But
and look at that volume. And I know Hogue and JD are not looking. And again, you don't need to look at the markets the same way that I do, right? They're not looking at this volume. But as soon as I saw this, I'm kind of jealous not being in that trade. I'm gonna be honest, because that was urgency if I've
could
ever
you
seen
break
it.
it down to a 3 minute?
Yeah, I mean 3 minute, 1 minute, it's all the same. It's all the same. Uh,
Hmm.
There we go. Rejection right at that low. You sacrifice trade location a little bit being on that 3 minute, but that was just an amazing trade. Um, they didn't hold it all day. I think they probably got a full dollar out of it. I know Hogue was trailing it as it goes. At one point, we did talk about getting out if we got back above VWAP, or if we closed above VWAP. Not sure that we did that, but you're not going to catch 100% of the move every single day. But they took a big chunk out of that. And again, with a very simple entry strategy, right? Talking to a trader over the weekend and, just about once you have a strategy defined, it does not have to be anything crazy complicated. They literally drew a box around the first minute candle and said, if it goes up, I'm going to buy it. If it goes down, I'm going to sell it. Everything else from there is a trade and account management decision. And it can really be that simple. Uh, which is kind of crazy to think about because we could, you know, order flow and this and that and whatever it is, it went down, so they sold it, and that was it, coach.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. No, no. I was a great trade. Where now? What was the risk? Well, it was a small risk in a 1 minute. Really, make new highs. Now that came off the opening, not in the middle of the day.
Mm.
key point here. Opening means something. That's when the orders, larger orders come in.
Yep.
Well, if you could have done that in the middle of like an hour before, you wouldn't get that flow, most likely. Um, so great trade. Um, and where we go right back down into the bottom of the range.
Bottom of the range.
Um,
Let's see if that holds. All of the fundamental news that I've heard about and read is bearish. I don't trade off of fundamentals, but you can't ignore it, especially in a commodity. Um, and the chart is agreeing that there are sellers in crude oil. That being said, we found buyers in this area before. Do they step in again? And then miraculously, that news turns bullish.
well,
We'll
there
see.
is a range trade over what, 2 years now.
Yeah, it's going back pretty far. Going back pretty far. Uh,
But
at what? Go ahead.
that doesn't preclude from getting great trades there. The, the one get that wrong. Um, as we saw what that trade.
All right. Any other markets that you want to talk about, Coach? We got some questions. Shubham has a question about building into a position in the equities as the short is working. Is this a today's market recap since markets are closed? Kevin, thanks for joining us. Yes, we are reviewing what happened in the markets for the day. We do this every day, 4:15 Eastern Time, 3:15 Central. And just remember, with the time change, if you're somewhere else in the world that is not in the U.S., the markets might be closing earlier than you expected it to. Uh, we got people quoting regulator in the chat. Shout out to Coach Vince. Any other markets you want to talk about, Coach?
Oh, let's look at Bitcoin.
Right. And Coach Hoop was talking about a short potentially in natural gas. That's a ugly daily candle in that gas. Or a really nice candle in that gas, depending on what side of the market you're on.
Well, rejected highs of the move,
Yep.
but still held that gap. Um, I'm not too anxious to get into shorts, but from a position or a
Hmm.
swing trade, no, it's boy that gapped. Well, it's part of this trade war.
Mm.
Canada has a lot of natural gas. They could stop sending us in a moment's notice. Um, there's nervousness. Um, Now, none of that really matters if you're day trading.
Right.
Really doesn't. Um, Look tomorrow or in a few hours, see what it does off the opening. See if you find a place to buy it or sell it. That's all you can really do.
That's it. All right.
But above the 200. But look, Bitcoin. Let's go to the daily. Where are we at, Coach? What's that white line?
White line here on the daily 200 moving average, 80,821 closed today at 79,400. First close below that 200 moving average since October 10th, 2024. So it has been
A minute.
5 months
And
since we've closed below that.
yeah, we talked about that double top a couple weeks ago. Has never recovered from that. We're under the 20 and the 50. It's a big test. Um, Bitcoin is a big test here. The history of Bitcoin is it gets overdone on both sides. I'm favoring that to the downside now because it's another contract that's designed to go up. Literally, it's designed to go up.
Yep.
If you trade Bitcoin or any coins, it's not easy to sell, to get short. Um, that's why Bitcoin futures, in my opinion, has got huge upside because you can get short easily. Um, but focusing on that movement last night, that gap, um, it's in a very powerful position. Could go either way. I I think personally, my own person is that since we made that double top and we gapped lower and we talked about it, we've had 1 day of buying.
Yep.
Um, in this, or is it 2 days? Okay. Um, what did they get for that buying? All of it wiped out on the opening over the weekend. Why? I'll come up with 50 reasons why. It doesn't matter. I look
More
at
sellers than buyers.
more sellers than buyers at the end of the day. That's why you want to read the flow. So let's go to the half hour, see how it opened. And believe me, it was, I can tell you, it wasn't an easy sell. Why? We gapped, I think we opened 5,000 lower.
Yeah. Pretty big move down
Wow.
on the open.
Mm, okay. We Now with a gap like that, coach, have you noticed this? eh, I don't I don't like trading gaps lower like that until I
Yeah.
get some information. I could have sold it in the second half an hour as VWAP left. I like that trade.
Mhm.
Didn't follow through. Small. Now, when we talked, I don't I don't know at that point. Without a stop, I'm I'm vulnerable. Um, but there was some short covering. Okay, if you sold it, take measured loss that doesn't kill your account and look for another opportunity. Um, but today at the close, I had a chance to fill the gap. You would look at the highest volume was on that half hour was that's buy volume. Is that
Uh,
right?
the highest volume for the day was this candle right here, which was right
Yeah.
around 9 a.m. Eastern time, 9 a.m. Central Time. This candle
Okay.
here.
Oh, that was from Friday.
Yep.
All right. So now looking forward, the highest volume is on the sell side. We're not finding what responsive buying. That's why I'm favoring the sell side personally. Um, it's heavy, and we've seen this. Unless you're a hodler, um, where you're just buying it and holding on for dear life, um, you don't care. But if you're trading it or you're investing in it, you're feeling any buyers in the last 5 months are feeling some heat right now.
Right.
Now, add to that equities and Tesla. People are under some pressure. Um, when they if they liquidate it, which I call forced liquidation, this could get really ugly fast. That's why I'm favoring it. If not, well, it turns around and goes higher. I don't have to be stubborn and stay short.
Right. All
Anything you
right.
see in that? That-
Same thing that you just said, right? It looks very heavy. Spot Bitcoin being below 80,000 and closing below that as well. There's a lot more room down. I'm looking at a spot Bitcoin chart on another screen over here, and just like the equities, 68,000 I'm looking at potentially or downside if we continue. We closed below the 200 moving average on spot Bitcoin, which is at 83,287. Again, we closed today. Well, closed Bitcoin right now is trading at 79,500, which is under that 200 moving average, and not something that we spend a lot of time under. So yeah, like everything else, it looks extremely heavy. Buyers They're gonna step in somewhere, one of these markets, right? Whether it be gold, the equities, crypto, the money's not gonna stay on the sideline forever. Uh, so we will see. We got some questions. We're almost at time here. Do want to make sure we get to these questions. David H. Coaches, at what point will you guys call a recession? Isn't this a clear bear market setting up in the equities? So the official bear market percentage, right? Going off percentage. So at what point will I call a recession? Uh, I could call it today. Nobody's gonna listen to me. Uh, right. But a bear market is 20%, right? From the highs in the S&P. We're not even 10% yet, right? We're at 9.5%. Um, so, you know, recession comes after bear market, right? And I think we're far from that. Um, but even with that, maybe for some longer term positions and things like that. But if we're talking about day trading here, I don't even know that I think about that, to be honest. It's what is the market showing me for today? Uh, what is it showing me right now in front of my face that I can actively make trading decisions on? I think if I went into the trade saying, "Oh, we're in a recession," but a great buy opportunity presents itself in front of me, and I don't take it because I think we're going into a recession, that's not doing my job as a day trader. And David says, "Okay, so two weeks away." What do you say, Coach?
Okay. There's an old market saw about recessions, calling recessions. Economists have called 10 out of the last 5 recessions. We don't know. Is what I'm saying. We don't
Yep.
know. It'll come out in the data. Um, so trading in the present is the way we are as day traders. If we do have a recession and then we are in a bear market, there will be fat opportunities to make money. So focus on your process. All right. You'll know when the recession is here, when it comes. Um, but focus on your process. And I will leave that with the show.
Awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, focus on your process with risk management at its core, and you will be able to make money over time.
Shubham had a question that I do want to get to. Shubham, it is a little bit difficult to think about this without hindsight, and the question was, can you show if you were building a position in the down move in the equities, how you would have done it? It's a good question. Let's just assume, okay, so let's go with the first short that I took, right? The first short that I took in the S&Ps was at 56.90. Now we have the power of hindsight here. So I can just pick all the perfect levels. But what I would try to do, if I was wanting to add to this short, was how close can I get another entry to this VWAP? So let's say say I took a 3 lot here at 56.90, and we're getting some trade in our favor. I got about 30 points in my favor right now, so I scale out and I'm down to a 1 lot. At this point, what I'm thinking is how close can I get another add, either close to VWAP, which is this red line, or near some other high volume that I saw, right? So if we get this high volume here, and this almost, so this is the highest volume that we saw on the day. I want to try to short in this if I'm adding, right? As we get extended from it, I don't want to. We can see we check 50% of this high volume kind of perfectly. This would be a spot to add. Um, and then the same thing here, right? Significant price action and volume candles, then I would frame out this candle. If I'm still in, can I get an entry somewhere within this high volume candle is how I'm looking to add. Why there? This is where significant volume came in, created this price action, and it's allowing me an opportunity to establish my risk on the other side of it, right? If big sellers came in here and I'm able to add around where they came in and set my risk above the high of where they came in, then what I'm saying is if they're not defending this position, then I don't want to be in it anymore. Um, but again, like I said, I'll try to find, if I trade it really well, I'll be able to explain it better, right? If I actually added to this short, I'd be able to explain it better. So That's what I would be looking for though, right? Where did some high volume come in? Where does it give me an opportunity to limit risk and then go from there? All right. Dre Bledsoe says, "This is the best show on Top Step TV to learn from, in my opinion. I really value what both coaches have to share with us. Thanks, guys." Thank you, Dre. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Dre. That's what we're here. This isn't trading advice, as we say. It's educational and it's review.
Yes, it is.
If you can pick something up that helps you, that's what we're here for. We're here to educate.
That made me feel good after taking this losing day. So I'm going to end it on that. Good vibes only. Trade well, manage your risk, don't do anything stupid. Um, that's a reminder to myself as much as it is to anybody else. Don't do anything stupid. Uh, and if you do something stupid, just understand that you're completely in control of that decision, and it's something that you're willing to accept. Got to question whether or not what you're doing is in your best interest and in the best interest of the account. Trade well, manage your risk, coach. You got anything before we go?
Just I'll repeat what you just said. Control your risk, execute a trading plan, and get control. That's it. And I got to fly.
There we go. Have a great one, everyone. We'll talk to you all tomorrow. Catch Coach Hoop in Discord right after this, and then Coach Ray and Coach Vince as well. Of course, Dakota with slow markets tonight, and D with the London session in the morning. Have a great one, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.